All right, and welcome back to the Mystics of Texas. We are on Jeremiah again. We have decided to split this into multiple videos because there is so much to cover. If you have not seen the first video, I encourage you to go back and watch it. This is a very interesting book with a very good literary flow that is very descriptive of a lot of the things that God and Jeremiah want to do for his people and to his people. And we're about to get into some of the interesting things of how these other nations are about to come about and visit these chosen people and how God chooses to respond to his chosen people in their time of need and crisis. Mr. Schmidt, will you please take me to what you have, sir?
Well, we just discovered in the previous video in chapters 1 through 11 of Jeremiah where God does not listen to his people in need, and he brings and admits and continues to say how he brings evil unto them. If you want to see how Jehovah is portrayed in the book of Jeremiah and in the Old Testament, please go watch part 1 of Jeremiah. It is shocking, jaw dropping, amazingly insane. So, when we're starting chapter 12, and it says, "Draw them away as sheep to slaughter, and separate them for a day of slaughter." That is how God portrayed here likes to help his people. Draw them away as sheep. Yeah.
Well, you can't, if you are a animal farmer, you can't have your population thinking for themselves as individuals. They're much harder to round up and serve you. You need them to stay as dumb animals and to treat them as such so they continue to provide for your needs without thinking of themselves. But it is interesting that here in chapter 12, after that statement, old Jeremiah tries yet again to talk God down from his wrath, which, as you've just mentioned, God's wrath is to section off the people and shear them and kill them for their meat.
That is true. Now, on all high places in the plain have spoilers come in, for the sword of Jehovah is consuming. It's not nice, it's not sheathed, it's consuming. From the end of the land unto the end of the land, there is no peace to any flesh. So that is assuming right out of the gate, nobody is good in Israel. Mother, father, daughter, sons, grandkids, infants, everyone must die. Thanks, Jehovah.
Well, he has mentioned, if you go back and watch our first video on this same book, he did get everyone in Jerusalem to try to dig up their ancestors and throw their bones into the sun.
Yes, that is what he did. Thus said Jehovah concerning all my evil, all my evil neighbors. He's concerning his evil. He mentions his evil many times in this book.
And his evil natures. Again, God is the only God. Well, who is God's neighbors? What kind of neighborhood does he live in?
Apparently, it's
I think Baal's next door, his next door neighbor, and him and Baal have a little feud going. And that's why God doesn't like his people burning incense to Baal, because it's his next door neighbor.
right. He's trying to outdo the Joneses.
Yeah, I'll do the Baals.
Yeah.
The Jehovah's over here and the Baals over there. They're always trying to outdo each other. Those silly people.
So, these neighbors, the evil neighbors who are striking against the inheritance that I have caused my people, Israel, to inherit. Lo, I am plucking them from off their ground. In the house of Judea I plucked out of their midst. And it hath been, after my plucking them out, I turned back and I have pitied them. And I have brought them back, each to his inheritance and each to his land. I mean, what a fickle little bitch. I'm mad at them. I throw them away. Then I bring them back. I say I'm going to give this to them. I don't give it to them. And then I'm like, oh, well, I probably should give it to them. I give it back. It's like that, but much worse in the beginning and throughout the rest of this book. It's something to behold. Stay with us and you'll see more.
Yes, and I have to make one quick note on the language right there. If you think that that language was harsh or uncalled for, that my brother Mr. Schmidt said, you should really read this book, because the language that God says to his people and for Jeremiah, That is very mild. There is much more to come about God's wrath and how in-depth and detailed he is about having his people destroyed and other people destroyed. So the language of the Bible is by far worse than anything you would hear in a Randy bar or a midnight back alley. It is very brutal. It sounds much like a mob boss talking on how to take over a competitor.
A mob boss who has a lot of death and destruction as his experience, except he has the mentality of a 4-year-old and really enjoys his vengeance. It's something. Well, let's just continue on because we're in chapter 14 now, and it's one of the reasons why I wore my dragon shirt, because dragons have been mentioned multiple times in the previous video in the book of Jeremiah. Now they're being mentioned again, and they have been swallowed up. They have swallowed up wind like dragons. And for you people that don't know and did not watch the other one, dragons have periodically been a common theme, which I was surprised by going into the, reading this from cover to cover. Just dragons. Who would have thunk it? So we go. Jehovah said unto me, falsehood the prophets, and prophesying in my name. I did not send them, nor command them. So if I didn't send them or command them, well, we must kill them. By sword and by famine are these prophets consumed.
Just as I was saying earlier, that this language in this book is very brutal. This whole chapter, by the way, is God bragging of how he will punish his people. And when they are in the midst of their turmoil, he will not hear them. He wants to starve them with famine and pestilence, bring war upon them, so much so that they cannot even bury their own dead. Those are the words of Jehovah, the words of God for the people of God.
And here in chapter 14, verse 16, he said, and I have poured out upon them this evil. Like he admits to doing evil many times in this book and throughout the Bible. It's not y'all are doing evil, and I have poured out upon them this evil. Okay, and that is, that's an affirmation of Jehovah.
What? Now that you said poured out, because someone might not have seen the first video, God likens his anger to a cup full of wine brimming over, and he will force all the nations on earth, including Israel, to drinketh from the cup of his anger. And this is where we're at in the certain story in chapter 14.
Yeah, and whenever we go further down into chapter 15, verse 11, I just got a big kick out of this. It just said, Jehovah said, did I not direct thee for good? Like, my first, you have to laugh and go, no, that's not even close to anything that you have done.
Or if you go back to the alcoholic reference, which we have mentioned many times, that, sometimes alcoholics do things in the fit of rage that they think or they don't remember doing. And this is one of those times where God wakes up from being blackout drunk and said, did I tell you to do something nice? No, you commanded me to kill them all, sire. Are you sure? I thought I said, give them a treat. No, we were to burn and kill and send pestilence. Let's roll with that.
Yeah, and then God continues to ask the question. When Jehovah says, did not I intercede for thee in a time of evil and in a time of adversity with the enemy? And the answer is unequivocally, absolutely not. You just mentioned, Jehovah, that you will not hear them. You will not listen to them. You will not help them in their time of need. So you're right. He's like a drunken, forgetful person that likes to abuse these people.
He gets blackout drunk and causes evil and loves it when he's doing it. And it's almost like he kind of feels sorry for it. But then he's like, well, I guess I'm God. I can't deviate from the path I've already set for myself. Yeah. I'm just going to follow this one through.
Yeah, and this is what kind of God this is. For thus said Jehovah, not anybody else. This is what Jehovah says. Of the sons and of the daughters who are born in this place, and of the mothers those bearing them, and of their fathers, those begetting them in this land, of painful deaths they die. Not a old age, die in their sleep, what the normal passing of life and death. No, 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 no. Of painful deaths they are going to die. They are not laminated, nor are they buried. I'm not even going to let you bury them, guys. No, 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 no. For dung on their face. This is Jehovah talking. For dung on the face of the ground they are, and by the sword and by famine are consumed. And their carcass has been for food to the fowl of the heavens and to the beast of the earth. Now we're talking about people are being treated this way because some people in their community have been associated to what Jehovah deems to be inappropriate to him, which is giving perfume to Baal.
And let's make it very clear that God does not discriminate in this passage. He is willing to kill everyone wholesale, not section out the good and true believers, or, these people over here were good to me. It's everybody.
Yeah, it's something. And it had come to pass when thou dost declare to these people all these words, and they have said unto thee, for what hath Jehovah spoken against us all this great evil? Yea, what is our iniquity? What is our sin? What have we sinned against Jehovah? Like, these people are confused. They're like, we're living pretty good lives. We're not doing anything bad over here. Like, there's nothing going on. Can you please explain to us, Father, why you're punishing us? The answer is hell no. You are to die a painful death, and I don't need to talk to you right now. You just go ahead and get about doing your pain and dying. Yeah. That's crazy. And it said, thus said Jehovah, cursed is the man who doth trust in man. I find that just really difficult, because in order for a neighborhood to be neighborly, you have to trust that your neighbor's not going to come over like what Jehovah does and lets other neighbors steal your wives. You are trusting your neighbor's not going to come do that or burn your house or kill you. You want to be neighborly, friendly. I don't know how you can be cursed by not trusting man. It doesn't give it any description. It is one of these phrases that you just have to imagine what God is trying to say. Yeah, but it just says if you trust man, another man, you're cursed.
Well, let's point out the obvious flaw in his statement here. God does not come down and speak to the masses. It's done it one time when they were out in the wilderness and there was a tent thing. But God doesn't come out and speak to the masses. He uses mediums, and the medium is people to do his bidding. So by God's own words, he's saying that you shouldn't trust any of the prophets that I've set out for you. So his words right there are so convoluted that you can't ever make sense of what's going on. Because if you trust the prophet, you die. If you don't trust the prophet, you die. If you listen to the prophet, you should have done that better. Maybe the prophet had these words put in his mouth by God, but it's not God. So how can you take anything that's in this whole book to heart? And then you go into chapter 16, and basically God's own words are saying, don't have kids because those people are doomed. I'm going to do evil on them. Like God himself said, well, you probably shouldn't make a new generation because I'm just going to do evil to them too. Yeah. God's own words.
For your sins. And blessed is the man who trusteth in Jehovah, and whose confidence hath been in Jehovah. Well, that's just obviously not true.
Look at Job.
Yeah, and look at Moses. Look at Aaron. Look at all of them. He just continues to do evils and harms throughout the Bible.
And Isaiah, and this book doesn't have a very romantic ending. I hate to spoil it for you, but God does evil to this servant too.
Well, you got to keep it around and stay, because these things, if this book has any relevance or any significance at all in your life, it is important to know the heart of it. You would not go into a business contract or any sort of verbal agreement with anyone without knowing the substance of the matter. this is your spiritual food for a lot of people who have never read it. And that's why we are getting down to it. The hope of Israel is Jehovah. Well, if their only hope is Jehovah, they are in serious, serious trouble. And I do mean serious trouble. In the name, in the time of thine anger, work against them. He just loves to be angry. He stays angry. And thus said Jehovah of hosts, God of Israel, as though they could forget, lo, I am bringing in evil on this place. This is God. Once again, I am bringing in evil. That seems like something you would hear from a Satan or Lucifer saying, I am bringing evil, not the peaceful Jehovah God.
I think if most Christians knew the amount of times that God himself has claimed to do evil, want to do evil, or preparing to do evil, they would be shocked. Especially if the New Testament is so pro-peace. The Old Testament is very, very pro-war. And you have to stay along to the end because there is a wonderful end to this book that I don't think anybody sees coming. And the parallels that you can draw to that and these mid-chapters here are so important.
Well, we continue on it, and this is in Jeremiah come in from Tophet, which this is where Jehovah had sent him to prophesy. And he standeth in the court of the house of Jehovah. Once again, they mentioned the court of Jehovah, where previously was Satan trying to tell God not to be so evil against Job. And he saith unto all the people, thus said Jehovah of hosts, God of Israel, lo, I am bringing in unto this city and into all its cities all the evil that I have spoken against it, for they have hardened their neck and not to hear my words. Well, once again, we see specifically in chapter 19, verse 14 and 15, where God is again saying he is doing the evil that he promised to do. For no particular reason, just because he says they're hardened.
We know it says they're hardened, and if you go right back up just to chapter 18 and see the main theme of chapter 18 is that God wants his people as compliant, as malleable as clay to put into his own form. Now, when you get down to chapter 19, he says his people are hardened. They have not got that clay texture anymore. He can't mold them and move them. If you go back to some of the other earlier chapters where God is angry at people seeking knowledge, you can take that all the way back to Genesis 3, where the apple or the fruit of good and evil knowledge, God got very angry when his people did that. When they started to understand in their own ways of thinking and move towards what looks like a better God or a better society or a better way of living, God gets very angry. He wants his people malleable. He wants his people stupid. He wants his people, as said in chapter 10, to be like sheep that you can cur and kill at random, at will, to segregate them out and kill them. God doesn't want you to be hard or have a good mind or a sharp anything, no acumen at anything other than worship.
Well, you are correct. And as you move on in chapter 20, it says, this has to be Jeremiah now, it says, thou hast persuaded me, O Jehovah, I am persuaded. Thou hast hardened me and dost prevail. I have been for a laughter all the day. Everyone is mocking at me, because from the time I speak, I cry out violence and destruction. I cry, for the word of Jehovah had been unto me for reproach and for derision all day. So the people are kind of making fun of Jeremiah, not taking him so seriously as he moves about.
Well, they did put him in the stocks, and one of the reasons that he was put into the stocks is that he is saying that how terrible that this famine is going to be coming, that people are going to want to eat their own children. And part of that is because people were allegedly sacrificing their kids to the god Moloch. Well, so it's bad to sacrifice your kids in a child sacrifice to Moloch. But when Jeremiah comes to the city gates and shuts off the traffic and won't let people go into the city because they're working on a Sabbath, and says this pestilence is going to be so bad you're going to eat your own children, sacrificing to the Moloch is bad. Eating your own kids, okay in God's eyes. And that's when the people make fun of him and put him in the stocks. Rightly so, because he sounds like a raving lunatic.
Yes, he does. And it says, the word hath been unto Jeremiah from Jehovah, and the king of Zedekiah, and I don't know if I pronounced that right or not, but it's close enough, sending unto him Pashur, son of Malachi, and it goes on to these priests, and he's saying, inquire, we pray thee, for us at Jehovah, for Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, hath fought against us. Perhaps Jehovah doth deal with us accordingly to all his wonders, and doth cause him to go up from off of us. Jeremiah said unto them, thus do ye say unto Zedekiah, thus said Jehovah, God of Israel, I am turning around the weapons of battle that are on and in your hand. This is something, I'm turning them around. With which do ye fight the king of Babylon and the Chaldeans who are laying siege against you at the house of the wall, and I have gathered them into the midst of this city. And I have fought against you with a stretched out hand and with a strong arm, and in anger and in fury and in great wrath. And I have smitten the inhabitants of this city, both man and beast, by a great pestilence they die. So that is Jehovah, and that is his kindness. And who is abiding in this city dieth, by sword and by famine and by pestilence. And whoso is going forth, and who hath fallen into the Chaldeans, who are laying siege against you, liveth, and his life hath been to him for a spoil. That's something that this is what Jehovah revels in throughout the entire Bible. It is war, pain, and more pain.
Yes, and this is a first-hand, I guess as far as you can say, first-hand account of the siege of Jerusalem by Babylon. Now, what is interesting here, which you don't find out for a couple more chapters, but Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, is now entered into an alliance, a covenant with God, Jehovah, to take his people down. God calls Nebuchadnezzar his servant multiple times from chapter about 22 all the way down until the little surprise that we'll have for the end about Nebuchadnezzar. Because I can't wait for that part, because that is going to be so exciting.
Well, we have in chapter 22, it says, thus said Jehovah, not anybody else, thus said Jehovah, go down to the house of the king of Judea, and thou hast spoken there this word, and hast said, hear a word of Jehovah, O king of Judea, who art sitting on the throne of David, thou and thy servants, and thy people who are coming into these gates. Thus said Jehovah, do ye judgment and righteousness, and deliver the plundered from the hand of the oppressor, and sojourner, orphan, and widow. Ye do not oppress nor wrong, and innocent blood ye do not shed in this place. I found this passage so striking because it was so opposite of everything that's been said in the book so far.
Again, it's one of those blackout drunk moments. I mean, he does do this flipping, flopping back and forth all the time.
All the time. And it says in chapter 23, and lo, the days are coming, an affirmation of Jehovah, that they do not say any more, Jehovah liveth, who brought up their sons out of Israel, out of the land of Egypt. But Jehovah liveth, who brought up and who brought in the seed from the house of Israel, from the land of the north, and from all the lands whither I drove them, and they have dwelt on their ground. Okay, I mean, this is kind of the story that continues on with this, and it says, and I have put on you reproach, which is age during. He says this so many times throughout the Bible. I reproach you age during, which means through the age. Some people say it's an astrology sort of thing. This age. Maybe. Maybe not. Because some people say it is age forever. So who knows? They don't make it clear. Jehovah is apparently not very good at language.
He is not very good at timelines. I mean, when you say age during, I would assume that has got to be a generational thing, because they talk about generational punishments a lot in this book and all the other books of the Bible. So when it says age during, sometimes it sounds like forever. Sometimes it sounds for like one generation. It's meant to be confusing. It's meant so God has to be confused and everybody else has to be confused. Like this book, if it flowed like equally like I thought it was going to flow, like this is, oh, great God, he does all these good things. Well, that's not how the book is set up. It's 1 minute God's angry, 1 minute he's happy. 1 minute he's angry, 1 minute he's happy. He needs to be something angry about. This is such a warlike book. It is insane. There is nothing spiritual about this book. It's really about God being a drunken, crazy person.
Yeah, well, and from chapter 23, 24, 25, and 26, almost to 26, it's really a lot of repetition from the previous chapters. It kind of says the same thing over and over and over again, and from previous books.
The chapter 25 is the only thing really unique about it, is basically saying, if you don't worship me and change your ways now, I'm going to send the king of Babylon to kill and enslave everyone that's left for a term of 70 years. But it doesn't say in any of the other chapters or any of the other repetitive stuff, but in chapter 25 is where it makes it very clear that God has struck a bargain with Nebuchadnezzar.
Yes.
And he has a covenant with Nebuchadnezzar, which is not his people and is not his person. And he makes it out quite plainly within those chapters that you specified that God has a distaste for these people, but he is willing to use them to make his own means plain.
It's like Jehovah is the head of the CIA working with the mob.
Well, you could say that because they do the exact same thing, and this is what God does. He gets mad at the Babylonians for doing and preaching exactly what he preaches and wants his people to do, but they have their own gods, so he can't worship them, just like the mob and the CIA. They have the same end goals, but they worship two different things. One worships,
Yeah. It's something. Well, in chapter 26 and further, it goes on and says, and it come to pass, at the completion of Jeremiah speaking all that Jehovah hath commanded him to speak unto all the people, that the priest and the prophets and all the people catch him, saying, thou dost surely die. So as Jehovah commands Jeremiah to go around all these people, telling them to, everything we covered in the first part and now this second part, is they think he's crazy, he should die. And wherefore hast thou prophesied in the name of Jehovah, saying, as Shiloh this house shall be, and this city is wasted without inhabitant. And all the people are assembled unto Jeremiah in the house of Jehovah. And the heads of Judea hear these things, and they go up from the house of the king to the house of Jehovah, and sit in the opening of the new gate of Jehovah. And the priest and the prophets speak unto the heads and unto all the people, saying, judgment of death is for this man, Jeremiah. For he hath prophesied against this city, and ye have heard with your ears. So this is where where things start to change for Jeremiah, that people start to think he's really crazy, and they want him to die. And they're like, we just need to shut this stupid crazy person up right now. And if you are putting me, this is Jeremiah, if you are putting me to death, surely innocent blood you are putting on yourselves. Which I find that really
hypocritical.
Yeah, because they Jehovah kills so many innocent people, and on this city and on its inhabitants, for truly hath Jehovah sent me unto you to speak in your ears. If Jehovah's sending down a prophet, why does he make it so difficult to convince anyone that you're saying the truth? Just as Jehovah said previously in the other chapter, don't ever trust any man. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. And in the heads of all the people, they say unto the priest and say unto the prophets, there is not for this man a judgment of death, for the name of Jehovah and our God hath spoken unto us. Only the hand of Enochim, the son of Sapphon, hath been with Jeremiah, as to not give him to the hand. So this guy saves Jeremiah from being put to death. And then this goes on saying practically the same thing in a very repetitive nature, unless you have something else, Mr. Schmidt, from chapter 28 all the way to the end of chapter 30 is almost the exact same thing.
It is almost the exact same thing. There was one very interesting passage in chapter 27 where God is telling his people through Jeremiah that they have to serve Babylon or die. Like, this is their one chance of living, to serve Babylon and Nebuchadnezzar as he has instructed them to do for the term of 70 years. If not, you die. And then it keeps repeating basically its own same thing. But from that's really my only big notes from that. And then obviously the term of 70 years is a lot.
Yeah, and they serve a whole different God. So it's a whole different sort of thing.
Yeah, and well, actually, one more thing. In chapter 29, God makes it clear that you need to enjoy your slavery of the term of 70 years. And if you don't enjoy it and revel in your slavery to the Babylonians, then God will smite you again. So those two chapters, those 2 points were really, you're right, most of it is just repetitive, blah, blah. I'm going to kill, famine,
And this is more of what the other books have already said in this chapter 21, but it's very worthy of note, especially in chapter 31. At the time, an affirmation of Jehovah, because Jehovah always has to affirm everything in this book. I am for God to all families of Israel, and they are to me for a people. Thus said Jehovah, found grace in the wilderness hath a people remaining from the sword going to cause it to rest. Israel, from afar Jehovah hath appeared to me. With love age during I have loved thee. Therefore I have drawn thee with kindness. When they randomly throw in these niceties, you just slap yourself in the face going, but you were just evil in the previous chapter.
As I've said many times throughout this, it sounds like God is a abusive husband or abusive father. That, look how nice I am to you. And then he goes right back to doing evil in the very next chapter and before. Like, he's just a abusive alcoholic that doesn't remember what he does. Like, there's just no other explanation for it.
You're right. And this is kind of a fun repeat. Thus said Jehovah, lo, I am giving this city unto the hand of the Chaldeans, and unto the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and he hath captured it. And come in and have the Chaldeans who are fighting against this city, and they have set this city on fire, and have burned it, and the houses of whose roofs they made perfume to Baal. I am burning your houses because you made perfume, and you poured out libations to other gods so as to provoke me to anger. And by damn, don't you make perfume for Baal, because I'm going to burn all your crap. Go, Jehovah.
Makes me want to get on my knees and pray, like, right now.
Right now. Yeah, and in chapter 33 it says, and there is a word of Jehovah to Jeremiah a second time. A second time, and he is yet detained in the court of the prison, saying, call unto me, and I do answer thee. Yea, I declare to thee great and fenced things. Thou hast not known them. So now Jehovah's just popping on into the prison there with Jeremiah, saying, "Yeah, come on, let me teach you out. I haven't told you everything."
Yeah. There's more.
Yeah, hold on. And for only $19.95, you can get this free one.
I was thinking the exact same thing. Yeah. Just pay separate shipping and handling.
Right. They are coming in to fight with children and to fill them with the carcasses of men whom I have smitten in mine anger and in my fury, and for whom I have hidden my face from this city, because all of their evil. Well, you're calling them evil, Jehovah, but you were just talking about in all the most of the previous chapters that you are bringing evil to them, your evil. Lo, I am increasing to the health and cure. I'm health and cure, and have healed them and revealed to them the abundance of peace and truth. Isn't that nice of you after you just killed all their sons and daughters? That's fantastic.
You're forgetting enslave the rest of the population.
Yeah, and they need.
Don't forget that.
That's right. And I have turned back the captivity of Judea and the captivity of Israel, and I have built them as at the first. Well, that's great. And cleansed them from all their iniquity that they have sinned against me, and I have pardoned all their iniquities. So I'm just forgiving everything. I woke up and realized that I was a bad dude yesterday, and now I've pardoned everybody. Everybody for all sins, everybody's pardoned. And they have sinned against me, in that they transgressed against me. And it has been to me for the name of joy, for praise, and for beauty to all the nations of the earth, who hear of all the good that I am doing them. And they have feared, and they have trembled for all the good. Yeah, I bet they are trembling, because they know what your good turns into. And for all the peace that I am doing to it. So that's nice. Jehovah all of a sudden decides, I am forgiving everybody for everything after all that I just put them through. And so thus saith Jehovah, if my covenant is not daily and nightly, the statutes of heaven and earth I have not appointed, also the seed of Jacob and David my servant I reject. The seed of them I reject. I reject all of you, all of your DNA, all of your blood. I reject you if you don't stay with my statutes, which his statutes were do not make perfume primarily, and a couple of other just 10 commandments. Well, not even all 10, just steal, murder, and adultery.
Yeah.
And
really the adultery was not speaking of the human flesh. It was the honoring of other gods.
That's right.
As we've seen so plainly that he does not like perfume to other gods.
Oh, man, I mean, he hates perfume to other gods. For I turned back to their captivity, and I have pitied them. And this really encapsulates the whole book. I mean, it just continues in that vein. And in chapter 34, I just highlighted almost all of it because it tells this story of how Jehovah. What do you think, Mr. Schmidt? You want to read it, or do you want me to read it or not?
Yeah, go ahead. I think it's really important.
I think so too. So we go down to chapter 34, verse 4. It's a good story that encapsulates what's happening. Only hear a word of Jehovah, O Zedekiah, king of Judea. Thus said Jehovah unto thee, Thou dost not die by sword. In peace thou die. And with burnings of thy fathers and the former kings who have been before thee. So they make a burning for thee. Ah, Lord, thy lament for thee, for the word I have spoken, an affirmation of Jehovah. And Jeremiah the prophet speaketh unto the king of Judea, and he of all these words in Jerusalem. And the forces of the king of Babylon are fighting against Jerusalem, and against the cities of Judea they are left. The word that had been unto Jeremiah from Jehovah after the making of the king Zedekiah of a covenant with all the people who are in Jerusalem, to proclaim to them liberty, to send out each his manservant and each his maidservant, the Hebrew and the Hebrewess, free free, so as not to lay service on them, on any a Jew his brother. And hearken, do all the heads, all of the people who have come into the covenant, to send forth each his manservant and each his maidservant free. Set them free, so as not to lay service on them any more. Yea, they hearken, and they send them away. And they turn afterwards, and cause the manservants and the maidservants to return. So they set them free, and then they go, come on back. Whom they had sent forth free, they have them come back, and they subdue them for menservants and for the maidservants. And there is a word of Jehovah unto Jeremiah, and Jehovah says, Thus said Jehovah, God of Israel, I made a covenant with your fathers in the day of my bringing them forth from the land of Egypt, from a house of servants, saying, At the end of 7 years do you send forth each his brother, the Hebrew, who is sold to thee, and hath served thee 6 years. It's kind of like talking about the Jubilee. Every 7 years, everything has to be wiped clean and free.
That's exactly what it is.
That's what it is. Has hearkened unto me and not inclined their ear. And he turned back, yea, today, and they do which is right in mine eyes, to proclaim liberty, each to his neighbor. Seems like that should be, when Jehovah is talking about liberty for everyone. Liberty, everyone free. You get in agreements and negotiations and situations with your common man because you're free. Those are sort of stories that you can start to wrap your mind around. It's all these other evils that Jehovah likes to do.
Well, see, here's the problem, though, is God has set it up and has said before not to trust in your other man. You don't want to trust in those people. God doesn't want common people to get together and form things. He needs their worship. He wants them to have their own government, and the government is surrounded by him.
That's right. No mutual aid societies here.
Well, no mutual aid societies, but let's get a little bit deeper here. If you can't trust your fellow man, and this is supposed to be the God that is very spiritual, these telling you to completely take away your spiritual connection to you, your earth, and everyone around you. That seems like something that Satan or an evil person would do, to say, don't trust in your fellow man, to don't trust in anybody but me, and my prophets. But you can't really even trust them because they're also people. That's the spiritual message he's bringing down.
It seems like the spiritual message that's been preached by governments worldwide today.
Exactly. It's the same message.
It's the same message.
I wonder where they got the playbook from.
I wonder where. And you turn back and you pollute my name, and you calls each his manservant, and that brings him back, whom he had sent forth free at their pleasure, to return, and you subdue them to be your servants again. Therefore said Jehovah, you do not hearken unto me to proclaim freedom, each to his brother and each to his neighbor. I am proclaiming to you liberty and the affirmation of Jehovah. I love it when Jehovah says liberty, even though he doesn't mean it, because he's proven it many times. But unto the sword, and unto the pestilence, and unto the famine, I have given you for a trembling to all the kingdoms of the earth. And that is what Jehovah likes to do. He doesn't do anything else. Like, okay, if you just betrayed what I just said, I'm not going to talk to you. I'm just going to set you on fire, stone you to death, or let you starve to death, or stab you in the belly, or one of those things that he likes to do. He just picks one. He just rolls the little spinner and goes, ha! Burning today! That's what happens. So as he moves on, he says, and I have given the men who are transgressing my covenant, who have not established the words of the covenant, for they are made before me by the calf, and by the cut into and pass through between the pieces. This just continues on with the heads of Judea, the heads of Jerusalem, the officers and the priests, and all the people of the land, those passing through between these pieces of the calf. Yea, I have given them into the hands of their enemies. I have given them into the hands of their enemies, and into the hand of those seeking their soul. I'm giving you not only your physical bodies, but your soul. And their carcass has been for food to the fowl of the heavens and to the beast of the earth. And Zedekiah, king of Judea, and his heads, I give into the hand of their enemies, and into the hand of those seeking their souls, and into the hands of the forces of the king of Babylon. And they are going up from off you. And I am commanding an affirmation of Jehovah. And I have brought them back into the city, and they have fought against it, and captured it, and burned it with fire. And the cities of Judea I do make a desolation without inhabitant. So that really, in chapter 34, tells the story of, hey, I told you to set these people free, which is the only time I've ever, except in Egypt, send my people free, but when you do, I'm going to torture them for 40 years. This, he just goes on to nothing but death and destruction for what would appear to be, hey, they're maidservants. So if they have maidservants, you can imagine if you're in a place where you're so accustomed, your society is so accustomed to having that kind of help, and you say, okay, y'all can go be free. You're like, man, this really sucks doing this housework. I better go run and go grab them back. Okay, that's bad. In and of itself, that's bad. But does that, because it doesn't say anything about how they treated them, were they treated good or bad? I mean, if they're maid servants, you would think they would be treated pretty well. But it doesn't say, so you don't know that. But that was it. That's the only reason why you go and you destroy all of it without going and teaching the value of other life, how to enhance the other maidservants' value, their education, their love, their kindness, to lift everybody up. Everybody can have mutual aid and mutual value with each other. None of that. There's no conversation of how to do that. It's just, you went and got them back, and I'm going to kill you, and I'm going to burn you, so die. The spiritual message is lacking.
The spiritual message is non-existent.
Yeah, it really is. So the house of Israel, they do hear all of this evil that I am thinking to do to them. This is Jehovah now. He's saying he knows Israel is hearing about all the evil that he wants to do, so that they turn back each from their evil ways. and I have been propitious to their inequity and to their sin. And Jeremiah called the son Baruch, however you say his name, sons of Neri and Baruch. They writeth from the mouth of Jeremiah all the words of Jehovah.
Yeah, because this is where, when I said in the introduction to the first video, that God wants all of Jeremiah's sermons and his prophecies and everything written down. So he gets this young fellow, this scribe Baruch, to write it all down for him. Mm-hmm. This is the guy that's conscripted to put this whole book into action. And then, this is how we got this book. So it's actually kind of an interesting, it actually tells us how we got this book. In every other book, it's just left up to the imagination of how it came about.
Yeah, so it's not directly from Jeremiah. It's from some other people that supposedly took down Jeremiah's words, which Jeremiah was quoting Jehovah directly, of course. So, and this is what they said here. And the king is sitting in his winter house. When Judea, Jehudi, however you say his name, readeth 3 or 4 levels, he cutteth it out of the scribe's knife, and has cast unto the fire that is on the stove, till it hath consumed of all the roll by the fire that is on the stove. And the king and all of his servants who are hearing all these words have not been afraid. nor rent their garments. They're not afraid. They just take the words and throw it in the fire. Like, this is crazy. Yeah, screw you, Jehovah.
I mean, if you read it, it seems like that's the perfect place for it to be, is in the fire.
Yeah, it sure does. And the king commandeth his son Hamelech, and the son Azareel, and all these other sons, and Jehovah, he hides them for whatever reason. And therefore,
Because they're the line of David, so it needs to be protected.
Supposedly. So he says, Jehovah concerning Joachim, the king of Judea, he hath none sitting on the throne of David, and his carcass is cast out to the heat by day and to the cold by night. And Jeremiah hath taken another roll and given it to Baruch the son of Nehi the scribe, and he writeth on it from the mouth of Jeremiah all of the words of the book that the king of Judea hath burnt in the fire. And again there were added unto them many words like these. So they said, okay, well, you burned it. Now God says, all right, y'all go redo it again and go give it to him again.
You know, it kind of reminds me of the Book of Mormon, where it was transcribed on the tablets and somebody wrote it down, and the wife was like, I don't think this is real, so she hid it and had them redo it, and there was different words in there. So this is the exact same thing, that it was burned, and you've got to redo it. So that's why you have the second book. You can see where like all these stories are just repeated. Nothing's ever new. Just like the Book of Mormon, they took it off this book. Like, we can do it twice. Let's make it interesting.
It's really the same. And Jeremiah goes out from Jerusalem, and he goes into the land of Benjamin to receive a portion thence in the midst of his people. What portion? What is he going out to get? Who knows? His portion. And it come to pass, he is in the gate of Benjamin, and there is a master of the ward, and his name is or whatever his name is. He's son of Shelemiah, son of Hananiah. And he catcheth Jeremiah the prophet, saying, Unto the children's thou art falling. And Jeremiah says, Falsehood, I am not falling unto the children's. And he hath not hearkened unto him. And they layeth hold on Jeremiah, and bringeth him unto the heads. And the heads are wroth against Jeremiah, and have smitten him, and put him into the prison house, the house of Jonathan the scribe, for if they had made for a prison house. So they have taken now Jeremiah into the prison house because people are pissed off. And
well, the reason that they're mad is because Jeremiah is saying that Babylon is soon to attack the city, and he's very unpopular for this, and nobody wants to hear it. So they capture him and enslave him, and they make it look like Jeremiah was telling the truth, and Babylon does attack.
Yes. And I pray thee, O Lord, O King, let my supplication fall. I pray thee before thee, and cause me not to return to the house of Jonathan the scribe, that I die not there. And the king Zedekiah commandeth, and they committeth Jeremiah into the court of the prison. Also, to give him a cake of bread daily from the baker's street, till the consumption of all the bread of the city. And Jeremiah dwelleth in the court of the prison. Sounds like they were pretty nice to him, giving him food and such. And thus said Jehovah, He who is remaining in this city dieth by the sword, by famine, and by pestilence. And by who is going forth into the children's liveth, and his soul hath been to him for a prey, and he lives. All right, well, that's nice. So if you stay in the city, I'm killing you. If you go out with there, you liveth, and your soul is their prey. And the heads say unto the king, Let, we pray thee, this man be put to death, because that he is making feeble the hands of the men of war, who are left in this city, in the hands of all the people, by speaking unto them accordingly these words. For this man is not seeking for peace of this people, but for its evil. And that is just what Jehovah said he was bringing to them, evil. And so you just thank Jehovah for that. And King Zedekiah said, Lo, he is in your hand, for the king is not able for you in anything. And they take Jeremiah and they cast him into the pit of Malachiah, son of the king, that is in the court of the prison. And they send down Jeremiah with cords, and in the pit there is no water, but mire, and Jeremiah sinketh in the mire. And, I mean, this is what Jehovah does to his prophets. He doesn't let them just walk easily. He has to throw them into mire, of course, because you got to test their strength and such, I suppose. O king, these men have done evil in all that they have done to Jeremiah the prophet, whom they have cast into the pit, and he dieth in this place because of the famine, for there is no more bread in the city. And the king commandeth, saying, Take with thee from these 30 men, and thou hast brought up Jeremiah the prophet from the pit before he dies. So that was nice of them. As he's being tortured in this pit, that they say, oh, well, let's go ahead and bring him up. Maybe he can do something else, give us some sort of warning in advance. Maybe we'll take heed now. But now that he's about to die in this pit, let's go ahead and bring up his tortured, almost dead body.
It's really interesting to me that during this time of strife and crisis in old Jeremiah, the chosen prophet's life, God is nowhere to be found. He does not talk to Jeremiah anymore. There is no sustenance for Jeremiah. He is completely abandoned and turned his back on by God. God is not hearing Jeremiah now. He doesn't care that his faithful servant, which is preached to everyone else, that doom and destruction is coming. When doom and destruction comes for him, where is God? Nowhere to be found. Doesn't care. It's like the kid waiting on the steps to get picked up by his drunk, abusive father that never shows up.
That's so true. And that's Jehovah, God of hosts, God of Israel. If thou dost certainly go forth into the heads of the king of Babylon, then hath thy soul lived, and the city is not burned with fire. Okay, so now that he's seems like he's changing up the whole story here. If thou dost certainly go forth into the heads of the king of Babylon, then hath thy soul lived, and this city is not burned with fire. And if thou dost not go forth into the heads of the king of Babylon, then hath this city been given into the hand of the Chaldeans, and they have burned it with fire. So they're giving these prophecies again. And I am fearing the Jews who have fallen into the Chaldeans, lest they give me into their hand, and they have insulted me. Now this is a quote from Jehovah. They have insulted me. And Jeremiah dwelleth in the court of the prison till the day that Jerusalem has been captured. And he was there when Jerusalem was captured. So that's great. And you're right. There is no Jehovah helping out poor Jeremiah anymore.
As a matter of fact, it gets even worse than that, because God has commanded that the people cannot run to Egypt to save themselves from Babylon. Babylon is coming, and Egypt, you cannot go there. If you go to Egypt, then God will turn his back on you and smite you and all your kin and all the rest of it that we've heard a dozen times. What gets worse for old Jeremiah, Jeremiah gets saved by a group of conspirators that apparently like this Jeremiah character and want to get him to safety. So he ends up where? In Egypt, where God has told him not to go and nowhere to go. But by this time, Jeremiah spent who knows how long in a pit where he is feeble and weak and has no choice but to be carried off to Egypt, where God has said no one can go, and if you do go, that you're going to be punished. So we have to think and know that now Jeremiah is being punished for his own faithfulness and his own servitude to God. He's being punished by being spirited away into the land of Egypt, which God said don't go. But where was God to keep this from happening? God doesn't give Jeremiah the strength to resist. God doesn't give the people that is conspirators say, hey, let's don't go to Egypt. God said don't go there. He lets them go.
I agree, Mr. Schmidt. You want to take it and sort of finish out this book?
Really, to finish out this book, so at the very end, It is talking about how Babylon will be judged because they do not walk in the ways of this God. God has used Babylon to take over his own chosen people. Now, Babylon is quite famous in this time period for being a great and wealthy empire. And God despises Babylon for what reasons? Because they love wealth, they love gold, and they love their silver. They also love war. And God despises them for that because Babylon is the Rome of the time. They like to have all the wealth and they want to have all the war. And they love bringing war on the people. And I thought, what a hypocritical thing of God at Jehovah, this God, to not like a country because they bring war and love gold. He loves war and he loves gold. This entire book, this whole thing from Exodus on is all about war and stabbing and killing people. But he despises who? Babylon for that? The exact same thing. Why does he despise them? Because they're better at the war thing than he is? His people are actually successful? This is crazy. Now we have to remember back in the very beginning of this book where God has used Nebuchadnezzar as his servant, calls him his servant to do his bidding. Now, in the end, God has turned on Babylon and will destroy Babylon utterly. For what? Because they like all the things that God likes. If you go back to the beginning of this book, in chapter 6, God refuses to take the offerings of gold and silver from his people because he has now seen this as a bad thing, when in the past he's more than willing to take all the gold and all the silver and all the bronze and all the brass. As a matter of fact, at the end of this book, when they're making the claims that Babylon has taken all the spoils of war from Jerusalem, they go to great details of describing how much brass was stolen from the temple, a weight without number they mention. So Babylon likes these things. Well, obviously the Jews, they like these things too. They have enough brass that's unnumbered. If you go back to the other book that's right before this book, Isaiah, the king invites Babylon and Egypt into his chambers to see all the wealth of Judea, to see all the wealth of the Hebrews and his people. And Isaiah says, oh, this is going to be a bad thing. You know, they're going to come back and steal everything. Well, 200 years later they do. That's not even the same group of people. So the Isaiah book is completely thrown out of the window. Now you've got Jeremiah coming in here saying the same thing, and God is against these people. But he is more than willing to use them to get to his own means, because God is too much of a little sissy to do it himself. He's a drunken, abusive piece of shit, honestly.
I tell you, you really nailed it right on the head. And every time we get finished, progressively from Genesis to this book, every time I want to sit down and read the Bible and go, please, infinite universe, show me this is worth reading. Like there is some actual step-by-step or some guidance, some good stories that illustrate why and how can I be a better person? How can I love my brother more and show it? How can I do the same with my wife and everyone that I love and care about and be a broader ripple of positivity around where I go? That is still yet to be the case. This was another book that definitely did not do any spiritual help for me whatsoever. And instead, all I got was Jehovah talking about all the evil he was going to be doing to everybody. And that was it. That was it. It left me wanting. It left me irritated that, wow. Once again, I come to a deeper realization. One more book in. We're almost to the New Testament, which I am anxious to get to. And hopefully y'all come along with us. It's something that whenever you come to the end of a pretty long book, Jeremiah was not a short one, and you just have to step back and go, wow, this is the foundation of a lot of people's beliefs and all it is death and destruction, fire and famine, kill, kill, kill. Nothing of, there's a couple of words in here that he says, oh, I'm kindness. I'm kind to you. And then, bam, dead. It's just something. It's just wow, wow, wow. So with that, Mr. Schmidt, you want to sign us out of here?
I would love to sign us out of here. I thank everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did making this. We go through great pains to try to really get in depth and understand this Bible and all the other talks that we go through. If you've not seen any of our other talks, I encourage you to watch them that are not on the Bible. We have a great series on Marcus Aurelius and a myriad of other topics. So with that, I hope everyone has enjoyed. You can get us on all the alternative sites, BitChute, Rumble, Odyssey, mysticsofTexas.com. And with that, have a good day.